Today's guest is Pierre Chauvineau, and we're going to be talking about his leadership philosophy. Now, this is something that Pierre's been working on for a while now, and I'm really excited just to dig into to see what he's thinking, how he helps people, and how he's helped himself throughout the years with his incredible career. So it's a real honor to have you on here, Pierre.
Thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure also on my side.
Wonderful. So when we had wanted to put this this conversation together, you said that you wanted to talk about your personal leadership philosophy. If I can ask you first of all, why did you want to talk about it? What's important to you about it?
Yeah. So personal leadership philosophy to me is something that captures everything that you have learned really through your life, and it's a way also to give back and to help others understand some of the key concepts. And that's the reason I wanted to discuss it, because I think it's all encompassing on what I've learned over the last way too many years.
Lots of years, I'm guessing. Not that many, obviously. You're young. You're a young person. You absolutely are. So okay. So how did we start this, Pierre? Where did we start? Is it? I think we've got why you want to share it, but is there? Who would you say this message is best for, and what are the kind of key things? If they only were listening for 30 seconds and then switched off, what would you say?
So the target audience is really everybody, starting from the young CEO to the young to the Generation Z, to the old CEO, who I'm sure will be reminded about a few things that they tend to forget, or they can reinforce during their next few years in charge. So where do we start? I think we start with for me, the absolute first rule is know yourself. That's how I start always a coaching conversation, mentoring conversation, leadership philosophy conversation. Know yourself. Self-awareness is in my opinion, the number one. And despite, just to explore that for a second, but having learned about myself for many years and trying to be always aware, listening, getting feedback, I'm always learning. That's another important concept. I'm always learning about things that are developing because something is happening around you and you are not aware. And when you are under pressure, you are really not the same person as when you have a great conversation like here with the two of us today.
Oh, bless you, Pierre. No, I know what you mean, because I've been with some people who are absolutely lovely when they're not under pressure, but when they're under pressure, they turn into this form of monster. And there any kind of guidance or do we know why that happens? I mean, because that is a leadership style, isn't it?
Yeah, we do. In fact, that's exactly the point. So what you do is you need to use the tests that are at your disposal. And I'm not going to recommend, even though I use MBTI, Myers-Briggs mostly.
Okay.
There are many more, and none is like the ultimate test. That's my opinion only.
No, I agree.
Right, and so what you need to do is use one and try to establish like a benchmark. See, yeah, and learn from that. Try to understand who you are from that basis. Use it. Talk to your spouse, talk to your friends, talk to the people around you, especially at work. Not only the people reporting to you, but your board, if you are the CEO of a company, anyone who knows you, and try to gather the feedback and see if it works. See what you get from the test is kind of adequate, and then that's your baseline. And then you start working from that and start learning and start developing new skills, new competencies, and learn about you on a regular basis based on that benchmark.
So that's really interesting. But I always find that sometimes, because you've got such great experience in what you're doing, saying, oh, you just learn, you progress. How can we, if there were a kind of toolkit and you were saying, do these next things in the next 24 hours to help you progress, what would you say to the person who's watching, listening, to do to help them progress, but after they've understood a little bit about their personality?
Yeah, so it's just by experience. You cannot do it differently, just by trying, by being aware. So imagine that we have tomorrow we work together on a special project, and there is tension, and that will always happen, right, in any organization, even with the best friends.
Yeah.
So with that tension, how do I react? What's happening?
Mm.
Try to be aware, and then analyze it back. Later, sit down. Make
Hmm.
take your time and look at how you reacted. Does that match with what you understand you were, or your profile was, or is it a completely new behavior that you didn't know? In fact, what happens is, it's so well done, those tools, that they will tell you how you react when you get angry or when you get under pressure. They, your profile will match exactly, in general. It will match very likely what the Myers-Briggs tells you about, the situation, the frustration, and then you just check: is it exactly how I've seen it? And then you learn. And the next time, once you're aware, it's much easier to manage.
So it's that self-reflection part that you're thinking. You give yourself time to reflect on the conversations that have gone well and gone difficult. Do you have a certain technique that you reflect? I mean, do you need to be in a certain state of mind? Do you have any tools that you use?
Yeah, not really. It's more about taking the time. It's more,
Right.
making sure that you allocate the time to do it. If you don't, then you run through life, and you have learned a lot, but then you don't take advantage. And the self-reflection is very critical, because you can learn by reflecting, taking the time, and everyone is individual. So the way you do it, Tony, is not the way I'll do it. So you just need to adapt, find your rhythm, and then spend the time doing it. In fact, maybe a slight different angle, but it's also along the same line, is when I do a coaching session, I always ask the person what gives you energy and
Oh
what
yeah,
removes energy. Be-
interesting.
because that will guide a lot of your decision on your career, for example.
That's interesting. So I always found this. I know when I was just first starting out, you would read books back then, and people would go, "Oh, you do this and you do this," and you'd go, "Oh yeah, but I don't quite know how to do it." And I kind of wish someone had said to me, "It's there's no right or wrong. You just have to be out there. You have to just put yourself into those difficult conversations, into those difficult areas, and the more difficult it is, the more you're going to learn." I didn't do that, and I kind of shied away. How if anybody was shying away from going, I'm not quite sure how to do this next step. What would you recommend they do, or any words of wisdom?
Yeah. So you just said something really critical in leadership development and stretching yourself and developing yourself. So my personal philosophy reflects that. In fact, um, I want to give the people in my team, even though it's now in the past because I'm a non-exec going forward. But when I was an exec, I wanted to really give stretching assignment to those people,
Yeah,
because that's the
yeah.
only way you learn. You learn fast, you learn hard. Sometimes you fail,
Hmm.
but that's the way you learn. So I completely agree with your statement.
And would you say so? You've got your leadership. So if it's personal leadership development and how you're developing yourselves, is it something you do in isolation, or you said that you would talk to partners, people at work, board, etc. So that communication aspect is quite important to you. Is there any kind of tips about developing that? Because some people are quite shy, especially when you're talking to people in power. I mean, first time I met you, I was like, oh, it's Pierre. I was like, a little bit. This guy's like super successful, and I was a bit scared about talking to you, like a bunch of other people I've met in CSCF. But then when I get to know you, oh my goodness, you're a really nice bloke. Any tools about how to be a lot faster than I was?
Yeah, so I'm not sure there is a tool, but there is clearly you need to be open about yourself and talking to others. So be open, be direct, be honest, and that builds. I mean, that's what I call the person. This is maybe another angle, even to the leadership philosophy. I call that my personal values. Those values are highly critical, to build a fantastic organization. Again, back to the tension. In every organization, you will
Yeah,
have tensions, right? And at every stage of development. What will make a tension manageable is the personal and organizational values need to be aligned. They really need to be aligned. So when I talk to my team, for example, when I used to talk to my team, I used to tell them, guys, those are my values. Be open about what you are about. Be open how you manage failure. Be open about how you manage mistakes, and how you manage trust or lack of trust. All those concepts are highly critical. But share it with your group. Be open. Never be shy. The difficult discussions are always useful, and they always come from the trust perspective.
Yeah, I know, but I always, and going back to my experience, I always shied away from conflict because I wanted to be liked.
Yeah.
Any, I mean, how if you were talking to my younger self, only a couple of years, for example, what would you say about that?
I really love that comment because I was the same.
Okay.
But so I thought that being liked was the way to be at the beginning of my career.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in fact, it's wrong, completely wrong, Tony. Completely wrong. So my concept on this is called tough love.
Yeah.
And I think tough love is the most critical and one of the most difficult one to get through. Tough love is giving the right feedback to the person when you see it. So you see something happening with that person, you take them on the side, and then you say, "This is what I've just seen." Put it in nice words, but very factual, and that is going to help that person go to the next level. If you have to be true to the person by being direct and honest about what you've seen, not being nice, and that's a huge difference.
And I think that's the tricky thing is that you don't quite know because you need to work with these people again and you want them to be your friends and you want it to be a really cool place to be because you're spending so much time and sometimes in my early career I was scared about screwing up so I didn't lose my job or anything and giving that tough love seems just so it seems so dichotomic against what you want to do. How do you get into that mindset from someone who's never done it? I mean, now it comes easy. He says, still find it really hard. But how would you help people make that shift, as it were?
Yeah. So it's just practice. You have to,
Okay.
be again awareness, be aware, and then practice. So practice, you can fail right at the beginning, but if you don't try, you won't get there. Once you become proficient, you will see a huge difference. It really works. I have seen in my early career that I didn't understand why love being nice was not the way, and people were reacting in some funny ways, and my first wake up call, in fact, this is a really good one, very practical. I did a 360 after like 5 years. I was working for a large company at that time. 360, and when I received the feedback, I thought it was a different person. It was not me.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
there was such a disconnect between what I thought I was and what people said I was. So
okay.
do a 360. That's really good practice anyway, with the people you work with. It could also be with your friends or family.
And is that anonymous or is it with their name? So are you anonymous or not anonymous?
Anonymous.
Okay.
Anonymous. But if you're in an organization, you need to have a balance between the direct reports, the peers,
Yeah.
the people above you. It could be board or somebody else.
Yeah.
You need to have like a balance. But then it gives you again another way to benchmark where you are. And once you understand that there is a gap, then you need help. You need someone to help you, and like a coach might be the right person at that time
Yeah.
to kind of help you practice some of the things that you don't understand. And to in my case, I at the beginning I didn't have someone to help me understand the gap, so I was kind of lost.
Yeah.
And then on the back of that, I got a great boss. There are very few of them.
Oh, that's lucky. Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Very lucky, and he helped me understand exactly how to bridge that gap. And that's how I started my journey in leadership. And that's why that all that leadership commentary is started. I started like everyone else, like you explained to me exactly how I felt in the early days of my career, and many of us are like that. So you just need to find a good person that helps you bridge those gaps, find the gaps, then help.
I must admit, the one bit I'd like to dig into, if I may, is how you go from someone who is um, wanting to make sure that you're liked, or if you put it in a negative way, not to be fired because you need this job, etc., and you don't want to give that feedback.
Mm.
How do you get that confidence to go from not giving feedback to giving feedback? Because that's a big gap. I mean, for me, I was forced into it. I had some really challenging times in one of my companies, and I was pretty much just forced. I couldn't go anywhere else, otherwise I may never have changed.
Mm.
How how could we help people go from that from being a people pleaser or wanting people to like them to actually saying something or being afraid of saying something?
Yeah. So I think, just to summarize what I was trying to say earlier, I think it's really by trying, and
Yeah.
it's also by help. Having someone, either a boss or a peer, or, it could be also your partner, because the
Hmm.
partners usually have a very useful view on how you are, and they can help you by giving you tools or tips. It can be a coach, it can be a mentor, it can be a trusted advisor, it can be someone that you respect, and then you have
Okay.
those conversation with them. We have at COCF, we always talk about the balcony time and having a
Yeah.
coach or a mentor. I think it's really critical, and it's really important that when you are, I love the way that you are so genuine, in fact, in talking to me. The genuine part is huge. So you realize that when you were young, or maybe even today, sometimes it's hard to give.
Last week.
Oh, okay. So then, who do you talk to, right? Tony?
Yeah.
Who is
Yeah.
your trusted advisor or
Yeah.
trusted person? You pick up the phone and say, "Shit, I missed this.
Yeah.
What do I do next?" And it's really important to pick it up when it happens. I used to make the mistake that when I was like a first line manager in my early days, I used to give feedback like 3 months after it happened, and that never works. That never works. It always came back to my face like a door slamming. So do it when it happens, please. That's key.
So, so that's interesting. So it's building up this professional network of people who you could reach out to. I know when I had a challenge, Kimmo, actually from Finland,
Yeah.
flew over to England and spent a day in my boardroom to help me, and I was just blown away because this incredible entrepreneur had given up their time just because I was a member of COCF to help me, and it almost brings tears to my eyes now thinking about it. Just that I didn't feel, why me, why on earth would someone do that? And I think it requires that element of somebody reaching out. So if you are a professional or you are a leader and you've got these skills, reach out to other people, make contact, because they may not make contact with you. How would you do that? How do you do it now, with reaching out to people to kind of share some of this wisdom, apart from this podcast, obviously?
I think that's exactly what COCF is about, Tony. Right?
Okay.
It's why we are part of that CEO program, because we are collaborators. We want to help, especially
Yeah.
people I mean, we have a few people of my age and my experience in that group, and we have a lot to give back. So how do you do it? You do it through your kids, through your friends. If they want to listen, because sometimes they don't want to listen, and sometimes maybe you don't say it right, so it's also the adaptation to the other. um, but it's also, through COCF, I find it an amazing platform where you can really give back to a community of CEOs, and it's not necessarily young people,
Mm.
people with a lot of experience. Sometimes they forget something because they're not in the right mood, or they it's a blind spot, or and you can really unlock things that people don't see. It's you are not going to learn too many new tricks at my age, I guess, but it's more about really opening, reminding, make sure that you support the person. Just that, asking the nice questions or the tough questions, is really useful, and that's what COCF is about.
And I think any professional network, I think just getting out there, talking to people, but I think talking to people in an environment where you can be open and honest, a trust environment. So, I mean, great talking in a bar or whatever is brilliant, but being able to have quality time where you can really delve into a situation, or once you've got to know them, you just not having a surface, hi, this is so and so, etc., but you're actually going into, okay, so tell me why that's an issue, and really starting to understand it. So I think getting out there in whatever format you do, because I think that's one of the things I've been blown away with. Is everybody wants to help, and is that something that you've seen everywhere, or is it just unique to a certain subset of leaders?
It's unique to a certain subset of leaders,
Oh, interesting.
but,
Okay.
but I have seen it at work. So because that's what I tried always to create is a trusted environment, and that's really challenging and it's really long to create. You know how trust is difficult to create, very difficult, and that's what also you get in COCF, which is an amazing organization for that. But the trust is so difficult to create. But once you have the trust, it's incredible what you get. The trust is based on many things, and the one thing that you don't want to do is destroy that trust.
Yeah.
And if you just do one mistake, sometimes it's enough to destroy the trust. So it's really hard work, but it creates an incredible environment where people can flourish, develop, have fun, enjoy. I mean, all those key phrase, sentence or words are critical to the development of a winning team, in my opinion.
Interesting. I mean, I'd love to at some point go through what the definition, how you create winning teams, but I'm keen to find out what are the kind of three things that you would say um, to people who are listening or watching about your leadership philosophy. What are the three tenets, if you had to explain it in that simple terms?
Yeah. So I'm not sure I can capture in three, but I will try. So the first is know yourself, self-awareness. We
Okay.
talked at length. The second is be who you are, and we one of the challenges in life is you want to be somebody else, right?
I want to be Batman.
Exactly. And maybe I can't remember what I wanted to be when I was young, but maybe someone I respected, like one of my friend's parents, who I really respected, and I thought I want to be like him.
Yeah.
But it's not how it works. Today I
Mm,
want to be myself, right? Because I've learned so much about who I am and so on. But you need to be who you are. You are the best person, right?
mm,
But it's more about putting water and fertilizer and making sure that you feed the person and make sure that you become the best you can be. So that's the number two. um, and another angle, in fact, of that number two is developing yourself. Make sure that you spend a lot of time. Don't wait for the others to do it. Make sure that you do it yourself, and that you just invest, which is what I do with COCF. I use COCF as my personal development tool. Um, and for the rest, I'm not sure I can give you another, like, maybe the values. Maybe let's say the values. I can tell you, Tony, is like the most important thing. At the end of the day, you have to share the same values if you want to create an organization that is trusted, winning, where you enjoy working. Like every morning you have a smile like this when you go to work. That happens. I hope I had that organization in the past. I mean, we should talk to the people who worked for me, but
I'm sure they totally agree. So, Pierre, could you tell me just one final advice about for people listening or watching about how to craft personal values? Are they things that you just have, or are they things that maybe you can help to structure?
yeah. So in fact, Tony, I have a list that in front of my eyes of my own
Amazing.
personal values, and but that's exactly why it's part of the leadership philosophy. Um, so the first one is open, direct, and honest. Right? I don't need to explain that too much. Second is being customer centric. So it's more an organizational value, highly critical for aligning the organization. The third is accountability, ownership, and empowerment. So accountability is really making sure that you own and you are responsible for what you do. Ownership,
Yeah.
accountability. Empowering is when you have a team, you ensure that the people in your team have a clear objective and clear guidelines, but they are responsible and they have all the tools in their hands to achieve the objective. Tough love is the next one. We talked about this at length.
Yeah.
And the last one you are going to love because it's you. Celebrating, having fun, rewards, and recognition.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's
I,
highly
I
critical for a positive organization to do that on a regular basis.
I mean, it's so important. I mean, we're only on this planet for such a short period of time, and if you're not enjoying at least the journey, the destination, I don't think it's worth it. If you're not enjoying how it's going, so I do love it. I think it's one of your amazing values. No, it feels like we could dig so much into each of those. I kind of would love to have like a maybe a 10 or 15 minute conversation with you on each of those items and break them down, because I feel Pierre, we've just scratched the surface into understanding who you are, and I think there's gold in them there hills, as they say, and I want to get to it. So would you come back in the future and maybe have a conversation, and maybe we could go in and break down some of those values, because what you have is so valuable, and I just want to make sure it's shared. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course, of course, of course. Happy to do it, Tony. And if to me, it's always the same. If it's of value to somebody else, I'm happy to do it.
Then it's of value. So Pierre, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you are a very, very busy person with everything you're doing. So thank you for sharing with us and our audience.
Thank you, Tony.